Obviously I haven't done the bases yet. I'll switch them over to the like Necromunda style bases after this. If you're interested in some better pictures, also a little more detailed, high definition, make sure you check out the Facebook page, as you can really get like the close-ups. But overall, I'm very happy with it. I would say honestly, like the tesseract glow essentially does the effect like perfectly. It worked great. I did just a slight little like painted on edge highlight over the iyanden yellow, but overall that just does all the work for you. Same with, I mean, really just the combination of the contrast paints, you know, simple dry brushing, washing, and then some edge highlights has really yielded like an awesome completed set of guys. I'm really happy with how these guys came out. They definitely look awesome to me. Yeah, overall I would say they came out very nice though. Like the color combination, it definitely like stands out. The idea was to get like the you know, energy effects and the flashlights and stuff to look like they were kind of glowing with the sharp contrast, which I was afraid was going to be a little difficult to do with the brightness of the yellow. And initially I really didn't like the yellow when I first saw it, because I'm like, man, why would these guys want yellow? Like, they're making themselves a target. But I get it that, you know, down there they're kind of the law, like nobody really messes with them, so they probably don't have to worry about it like that. But overall I think everything came out really nice. I love the models, are sweet, definitely cool. And slap them on a couple bases, and then we'll get some still shots and everything and get them on Facebook. But we'll definitely have a battle report soon with them as well, and play a couple games, get to really enjoy the new Necromunda for the first time, as we haven't actually played yet. I've been so busy with everything going on. But I think overall these guys are super cool. Definitely looking forward to smashing some skulls and shooting some energies. But yeah, I mean, you guys watch the steps. It's very basic techniques, just a lot of them. Just using the same techniques over and over, and you know, you can stop whenever you want to. You don't have to keep going with that last little edge highlight. But a lot of times I find, like, you know, if you do an initial color and then a wash, and then after the wash you do like 2 highlights versus 3, or 1 highlight versus 2, it makes like a huge difference to just spend that extra time, which is like very little, and just do a tiny bit extra on the guys. So, but yeah, these models are awesome. It came out really nice. Definitely like the paint scheme, like the by the box or box style paint scheme. Real cool. And I may add in like a little bit of extra details, maybe some decals on the little chest pieces or the knees, or some like the painted on little stripes. But I think I'm going to go ahead and call it there. They came out very nice. Definitely happy with them, and looking forward to playing some games. And this Warhammer Man Studios, I'm Warhammer Man. And if you liked the video today, make sure you give us a like, subscribe, and check out the still pictures on Facebook. Welcome back to the channel, Warhammer Man Studios. I'm Warhammer Man, and as you can see, we got the Indominus set in. I wanted to do use this opportunity to do a how to paint tutorial. I was going to initially do white scars, but there's like a bunch of white scars ones out there, and I've already done a couple like how to paint white armor. So I went the other direction and decided to go with Death Watch. And I'm doing a how to paint black armor tutorial. But I went ahead and did some slight conversions, not necessarily to change the rules for these models, but to make them like a little more Death Watchy. I swapped out like the shoulder pad for like your traditional Death Watch shoulder pad, and then I swapped out like the sword on the Judicar and on the captain with hammers. Again, you don't have to necessarily change the rules or anything. I did it more just for like cool and to look like a little more Death Watch. And then I gave all the blade guards Xenophase blades. And again, not going to change the rules for the models or anything. It's just, I think, like a lot more thematic if they have like Xenophase blades and they're fighting Necrons, or at least, you know, the look of Xenophase blades. So anyway, went ahead and got started with some light conversions, nothing too crazy. Just wanted to have like a little more flavor to the models before we got started painting. Unfortunately, the conversion and painting tutorial to this point was corrupted, and I lost the file. So instead of showing you how to paint these guys, unfortunately, who are super cool, I may paint them a little more some other time, and I'm sure you will see them again eventually. But instead, I am going to do a how to paint the black armor tutorial, but we're going to do it on the Palanite Enforcer gang right here. And I saw a couple other tutorials online from people, and you know, I'm not trying to be a hater or anything like that, but like most of them just didn't really suit like my style. They either didn't look that great like completed, or looked like way too much work for what you get in the end. And for me, that just doesn't work. I have to have like for me, I have to find like the perfect blend of speed and quality, because I can't waste unnecessary time like painting things or repainting things or fixing like bunches and bunches of errors. I have to do things like in the like fewest reasonable steps possible. So right now, what we're doing is I went ahead and just obviously sprayed them black, just with like a flat black. And this is some Dark Reaper, Games Workshop Citadel layer paint. And right now I'm just saturating my brush pretty good for the dry brush. What I like to do here is use cardboard, because you are trying to get the water out to be more effectively dry brushing. And then I like to saturate my brush thoroughly, wipe the paint completely off, and then just continue to do that. And what happens is you'll start to get like a base buildup in your brush of that color, and then you won't end up with like pockets of like dry spots or wet spots or anything like that. You'll get a much more like consistent look. So then we're just going to take our model, and we want to basically start like at the top where it's going to be the brightest, like near his head, shoulders, backpack, like anything that's sticking out. And we want to just kind of like drag that dry brush down the model. It's okay if we're just looking to like basically get all the raised edges, to get like to get some of this paint on there. And we're going to start off slow, but once we get the brush just right, we can get a nice little flow going and do it in minimal steps. But essentially, like if the black was covering, let's say 100% of the model, or the armor at least, what we're looking to do right now is cover about like 75% of that. So we still want about 25% of the black poking through. And then obviously like there's tons of like cloth pieces and stuff that we don't want to look like the armor, and then we're going to paint in different colors later on, but we're just not going to worry about those right now. We're just focusing on the armor, and then we're going to paint everything else around it after the armor is completed. So, and all we want to do, like I said, just get a basic layer of our Dark Reaper on here. Make sure we get it, like I said, about like 75% saturation over top everything. And we want it a little brighter towards the model's head, obviously, as you know, whatever light source is typically going to be like above and coming down. And I just did like a basic little 5-man starter gang, nothing too crazy. A couple of each style models, and just some various equipment, everything from like a Juve with like just a flashlight, and or I mean, I guess you could be a regular guy, but just a flashlight and a little stub gun, all the way to like you know, all the specialty weapons that you might desire in a game. And one thing that's nice about you know, dry brushing basically as your first step is basically every part of the model is going to get painted like after this step, either with more dry brushing or edge highlights or a completely different color. So this step does not need to be perfect. Essentially, you're just looking for like the adequate coverage for like the initial levels. And make sure you do a good job getting the undersides of the models nice and dark. Alright, so we finish up with the Dark Reaper. Now we're about to come through with the Thunderhawk Blue and just do the same thing. And if we said like the black was covering 100% of the model, the Dark Reaper was covering 75%, let's say the Thunderhawk is going to go 50%. So we're just going to focus once again on the top portion of the model, looking down. And what we're aiming to do is just get it like subtly brighter at the top of the model, and it just gets like subtly less bright towards the bottom. So as we wear the paint off of the brush through this process, we will slowly like move the brush towards the bottom of the model. When we're initially starting, we're going to focus just on the top. So, and then you'll see when we put him back now, you can see a little bit of a transition in color from the next model. And that's all we're looking to do, is just keep it a subtle transition. And you'll see as we complete each model, you know, the subtle difference between each step, like a little more clearly, as where if you just saw like before and after, it's not as clear, but when they're standing like right next to each other, it's a little more evident. And then again, we want to focus mostly at the top near the head and face area. And you know, we're obviously just focusing on the armor here. We're not worried about like the cloth or whatever, but you just worry about getting everything in the beginning, and then you don't miss any spots. And we'll just rock through and do each one of these, and then we will transition to our next lighter color, and then we'll start coming through with some edge highlights after this, and really like kind of crisp it up a little bit. You can go, there's lots of different routes you can go, but when I dry brush, I like to use a wash afterwards, because it helps to like take away like kind of like the chalky, like subtle little bits of like lines or dust that's kind of left behind by the dry brush. That's just me personally. You don't have to do that. I just think it kind of hides like the dry brush flaws very well and very easily. So what I'll do is I'll usually like lighten up the model like a little bit more. Alright, so as you can see, went through and finished all them up with the Thunderhawk Blue. And now I am, next I'm going to use the Lothern Blue. But I'm going to do something I don't do as much lately. Back in the day, actually not that long ago, I used to use like a dozen paints for everything, and I used to mix them a lot. But over time, I have just found that it's easier to just get all the different paints I need and more consistent, especially when I'm like adding models to already existing armies. So I don't mix my paints nearly as often, but in this case I don't want like the full-on light blue, so I'm going to do like a 50-50 of the two. And it's not that big of a deal, honestly, like mixing paints. Like I literally use like 10 or 12 paints forever, just those. But the diversity is just nice. And again, I used to use a wet palette a lot more often too, and you know, it allows you to like basically come back to that color whenever you need it, or like remix like that exact color whenever you need it. We're gonna do like real light on this coat and stick towards the top again. But like I said, it's just easier, especially when I'm doing commissions and I don't have the model like right in front of me to make sure that I like match the color perfectly. It just is a lot easier to be able to just like pull the paint pot out and know like, okay, if I'm doing an ultramarine commission, like I need to just do like this color combination, etc. So, and again, we're gonna do this one like more on the lighter side, and if it gets just a little bit chalky, it's okay too, because we are gonna do that wash, which is gonna clean it up a little bit. And if you don't know what I mean about chalky, it's just from like the dry paint like rubbing off, which is like the whole point of the dry brush. It just leaves behind like sort of like a little like paint dust that on like close inspection is like evident to the trained eye, and just hitting it with a wash along the way just kind of cleans it up a little bit. Oh, and what I was saying is too, is if I know that I'm going to do a dry brush like this and I'm going to come through with a wash afterwards, I will purposefully lighten up the model like one shade lighter or brighter or whatever than I intend when it's finished. That way when I hit it with the wash, it naturally just dulls it back to where I want it, so I don't end up making like extra work for myself, getting it just where I want it and then darkening it up and then having to relighten it up. So I just like save that step basically by anticipating that I'm going to be using the wash and darkening it up at some point in time. So right now, I guess what I'm getting at is these are going to get just a little bit lighter than what I want them to actually look like. And then I'm going to come back and darken them up slightly with that wash. And my main goal in this video is not to show you like how to paint the best model ever by any means. I just want to show you how to like make these guys look like similar to the box with like minimal technique, somewhat minimal paints, and you know, more importantly, just in like a reasonable amount of time. Because I think that's one of the issues I have with a lot of like painting tutorials. The tutorial will be like 30 minutes long. They will paint one model and it will be like never-ending cutscenes where you barely get to see anything actually getting done. So I'm like, well man, if you worked in the video for 20 or 30 minutes painting one model, how long is it going to take you to paint that whole model? I mean, did you spend like 6 hours painting that guy? And I know it takes a little longer when you're recording all that stuff, but my point being is it's not really like functional or probably useful for somebody that's watching YouTube videos to learn how to paint a single model in 6 hours. Like, people aren't trying to learn how to like golden demon paint one model. And if they are, they're probably not just watching random videos. They're probably looking for like golden demon painters and like subscribing to them and like Patreons and stuff like that. I guess my point is that like average Joe, I think, that's probably watching a YouTube tutorial, you know, or a gamer or whatever, is probably just looking to get their models on the table looking pretty good in a reasonable amount of time. And I guess with Necromunda you could spend more time on each guy because you don't have as many. But I like to think that the true art of painting is efficiency. And not necessarily on a specific model, but on everybody. Like if I have like 20 models in my army and 3 of them are painted really nice, but it's the 3 that your eye is most drawn to, and you like everybody that sees my like 20 guys like immediately wants to like pick up and look at those 3, it's going to make my whole army look like it's painted way better than it really is, because everybody sees those 3 models like primarily get their attention. As opposed to if I paint every model in my army equally and I have 20 models, if I use the same amount of time, each model gets dedicated way less time, so the overall army will be uniform but look worse. So as you can see, the dry brush came in, it looks good. It's giving us basically like what we needed. So now the next step is going to be basically we're going to want to wash that armor and then do like an edge highlight on it. And then we can do like all the cloth and everything around it. But the important step here is to decide what color is the cloth going to be and like the other bits. Because if we want to, we can go ahead and just paint them right now and then just wash the whole model if the whole model is going to get that black. So we have to decide basically like, do we want the cloth to be like brown or tan or gray? So I think what I'm going to do for these guys, I think I'm going to go with a gray and go ahead and paint the cloth right now. And then I think I'm going to wash the whole model at once. So, alright, decided I'm going to do a dark brown with the rhinox hide. I want it to be real dark so it doesn't stand out, and then I can just do like kind of like a sharp edge highlight to brighten it up some. So I basically just got a little on my palette here and got it pretty thoroughly watered down. And then I'm just using a number 2, nothing crazy, but I'm just going to go through now and just do along all the armor panels. So you'll see we have like basically like the knee pads are the armor, so we want to go like all this cloth here. We want to get all that cloth. Go around like all the you know, the gauntlets are all armor, the shoulder pads are armor, but underneath here you can see it's like the sleeve. We'll go in the sleeve. We want to get all this, the belt, all these bits through here, all this. And then we'll just go through and get all those little bits. Alright, got those all finished up with the rhinox hide. Now we're just going to do a little bit of leadbelcher. I just want to go in and take care of like the metallics. Nothing really too crazy going on right now. We basically just painted everything but the armor brown. So, and we're just gonna switch brushes just to one of our junk brushes because we're gonna be using the metallics, and we all know that you know, they ruin your brushes. So, but we just want to get like all the, you know, metal parts. Like we've got that little club weapon here. It's like the shock baton or whatever. And then you got to decide like how you want to do your guns. I'm gonna go ahead and do the metallics, and then I'll bring out some of the other stuff later on. And then also you have like the little like screen on their arms. You have to decide how you want to do that. I'm gonna do mine like glowing, and then there's like some bits on like the backpack in like the armor. I think we'll add a little bit of metallics in there. Alright, so we got the metallics all filled in. Now we're about to come in with our Nolan Oil Wash. Alternatively, you could use like different washes. You can use like a blue on the armor, or you could use like the agrax over it to get like a little bit of like a dirty kind of like brown and black combined effect. Or you could just go like traditional with the Nolan oil, like I'm doing. But I'm just gonna go ahead and like lather this over top of everything, the armor, the cloth material, the metallics, the whole deal. And we're just gonna cover everything generously, let it soak down in the cracks, and then you know, obviously start at the top, let it work its way down, and then we'll wick away any excess and let that dry for like plenty of time before we come back to it. And this is gonna kind of like unite all of our colors together and like kind of create like a uniformity on the model. And then we'll be able to like basically come in with our edge highlights or whatever we want to do next, and it'll kind of like bring out the highlights like where we want them to be specifically. But we'll get like not only like a uniform like kind of darkness, but also like a kind of color, and then it'll blend any like imperfections or mistakes we made along the way. So but yeah, and this one's not the gloss, obviously you can't tell in the pictures, but it's just the regular Nolan oil. And again, you could use like multiple combination of washes over top each other on different areas, specifically like whatever you wanted to do. I just specifically did this in a way that I would be able to wash like the whole model all at once. Alternatively, if you had like a bit that you were going to wash but you didn't want to hit it with the black, you could just do like we're doing right now, and then go and paint that color in next, and then just wash specifically like that little area. So if you just have like a basic plan for what you want to do ahead of time or in your mind, you know, without having to like seriously sit down and like plan out your colors, you can get a pretty good idea like what you want to paint in what order, so that you're not like working backwards or redoing a bunch of things that you already did, which is obviously like, you know, the theme of you know, my channel is just always working forward, never backwards, and you know, just finishing projects, getting stuff done. Because I think a lot of people end up with like loose ends, unnecessary amount of loose ends, and I think the longer you take from when you're working on something to when you come back to it or when you finish it, the less likely you are to finish it. So if you just push through and keep working on it that last little bit and get it done, then you never have to worry about it again. But if you just kind of like put it to the back of the shelf or out of the way somewhere, just kind of set it aside, the likelihood you're going to come back to that thing and ever get around to finishing it like gets less and less likely the longer amount of time that goes by. Alright, so we let that Nolan oil dry for plenty of time, especially down in the cracks and everything. And now all we're going to do is just take our Thunderhawk Blue again, and we're just going to get it just slightly watered down so we can get like a real smooth kind of blend or like highlight, edge highlight on the armor. But essentially what we're going to do is just look for like the areas like this that are going to be like most exposed to like the light, and in like a sort of like a zenithal way, and we just want to add like a slight highlight to those areas. And we'll just go through and kind of pick out like the areas that are typically on the top, that would be getting hit with like the most light. And we're just going to add a little bit of our edge highlights in. And a good like practice for this is to say like, okay, I'm going to add like 20 lines, so you don't just get like caught up indefinitely doing edge highlights. And then you do like 20 on each guy and then go to the next guy. Alright, so we've got the armor highlighted with the Thunderhawk Blue now. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take that Lothern Blue one more time, and I'm going to do like a 50-50 mix with the Thunderhawk. And I'm going to get it super watered down, and I'm basically just going to do like an edge highlight glaze just to bring out the armor just slight bit more. And again, it's like roughly a 50-50 mix. And then I'm just watering it down just a little bit extra. And then there may be a couple spots where I'll hit with like the pure mix. But essentially what I'm trying to do is just focus on a couple areas towards like the top of the model. And just get a little bit of like extra brightness. Kind of bring the light towards his face primarily. And if we did like, you know, a smaller amount each time we went through, this one we're just going to do a little bit less of like an edge highlight. Alright, so there we go. All done layering those up. I took it all the way from the 50-50 blend to the just straight up Celestra gray in some little like parts towards the face specifically, just to give like the highest level highlights. But that's our armor done. And then now we're just going to go through and do the same thing for the cloth. But we're just going to do like a couple subtle layers of probably like Bugman's, so we get like a little bit more of like a warm cloth. I don't want it to stand out too much, but I want it to, you know, stick out from the armor, and I want it to be clear that it's cloth and not like the ceramite like plating. So we're going to do that next. As you can see though, each of like the edges and everything is like starting to really take shape, and it's really like picking out the armor and starting to give like that full-on armor effect that we're going for, that really like grabs your attention. And then as you add in the other colors, it really just starts to pop. So we're getting there. Couple more steps and we'll start really taking shape. So all right, we are making some nice progress, and this team is really starting to take shape now. I went through and did the mournfang brown edge highlighting, and basically just watered it down real nice and just picked out some of the detail. And then went ahead and did a 50-50 blend of the mournfang brown and celestra gray, and just picked out a couple little small details as well, just to give it like one more little edge highlight on the brown as well. And now what we have left is a lot of like the smaller details, but for the most part the models are pretty nicely painted. So what we're going to do is all the parts that are going to be yellow, all the flesh tones, all the lights, anything that we want to like basically paint with like a bright color over instead of the black, we're going to go through and do it like a nice like basically like 1 or 2 coats of white, depending on how like well you get it to coat and what white you're using, etc. But like the flesh tones, we can do the hair, the yellow, any of like the little lights on their equipment, any of that stuff we're just going to go through and do right now. And I've seen in a couple of the different pictures, The guys are all painted like a little differently, so you can kind of pick out which panels you want to do, and like which patterns and everything you want to do as well. It's really up to you. It looked like most of the knee pads have the yellow, and then most of the arm pads have the yellow as well. I'm not completely sure which route I'm going to go. It looks like this pad piece right there is done yellow in most of them as well, so I hadn't quite made up my mind. And in a couple of the pictures I liked how they were done, and a couple of the pictures I didn't like how they looked. So, and this is actually the first set of these guys I'm painting up, so I'm kind of still experimenting with what I'm going to paint, which colors, but go through and paint all these yellow. So we'll get them white now. It's important you take the time and get the consistency of the paint right, because we need it to get down in the cracks, but we don't want it to run like too much either. So alright, so there's the white all done, and we just try to get like a nice even clean coat. I skipped these things right here. I don't like them yellow just because this piece is going to be bright, because I'm going to make it like a screen. So I changed it up just a little bit. But the next step we're going to do is come in with the iyanden yellow contrast paint. And this thing has kind of like an orange look to it when it's in like the paint pot. But when you paint it over white, it gets like a really nice like yellow look to it. So we'll just go through here, and all we're going to do is, you want to kind of just start at the top and let it run down to the bottom. I oversaturated my brush, like seriously. And if that happens, just let the gravity like wick it back off. Until you get like the amount that you want and the color that you want. And I try to like start it at the top and kind of drag it down, sort of like with gravity, and then that will kind of let the contrast paint do its thing. And if they start to get like a little bit of like a splotch or whatever, you can kind of move the pigment to where you want it more. But once it starts to dry, you don't want to keep messing with it, because it will leave, like where you move the pigment away from after part of it has started drying, it will leave like a strange looking effect that you don't want. So we're just going to go through and do each portion, each panel that we did like that we want to be yellow. Now there's a couple of the panels that we did in white that are not going to end up being yellow. We did them for like a light effect, whether it's like the flashlights on the front of their chest plates, or like the one guy's actually holding a flashlight, or their eyes, the power weapon, all that stuff. And this stuff tends to dry just a little bit lighter than it looks like it is on the model, so it might look a little dark, and then after it dries, kind of like achieve a little closer to what you were intending. So, but that's it, that's all we're doing. Just go through, get it on there, and again, if you get a little too much on there, you can pull it back, just wick it away, and then vice versa. Alright, so there's the Averland Sunset all done, and we do want to let that dry for a few minutes. Be very careful. Obviously you don't want to touch it while it's drying, because it'll mess up like the contrast effect. But you can see it gives you like a real simple way just to get like some cool shading and nice like bright like depth of color. And then we'll go back through and we can do like some actual like edge highlights and everything on that. But right now we're going to do our flesh real quick. So we've got the Guilliman flesh out here. It's another one of our contrast paints. And make sure with these bad boys you shake them up really good, because what happens is they settle down on the bottom, and you basically get like all the actual like paint itself like settled and like clumps at the bottom of it. And if you don't really shake it, I mean for like 30 seconds to a minute, all that pigment is just like clumped up at the bottom, and the paint will just seem like really watered down and just not getting like the effect it's supposed to. So make sure you do shake these up really well, especially the first time you get them, or if you haven't used them for a while. So, and then same thing, we're just going to load our brush up. I'm not going to worry too much about the hair if I get on that, because I'm probably just going to do like more of a traditional kind of hair than like a contrast paint. But worst case scenario, if you did get some on there and you wanted to come back, you can just come back in and you know, just go back over with a nice little thin coat of the white, and it'll just put us right back where we're at. So, and it is important again with these that you make sure you saturate it enough that the paint like gets to do what it wants, because they're gonna want to like settle down in the cracks, and like the pigment really like fills down in, and that's how you get the effect. And if you don't quite use enough of it, you're not gonna get like the effect. All right, and here we've got that brand new technical tesseract glow, and we're going to use that for the greens. So I went ahead and shook that up really well. So we want to use this, I think, for the like the lenses on the flashlights, and then also for man, I might do those blue. I haven't decided yet. Such a tough choice, like just picking out the perfect colors. I definitely want to do it for the eyes. Get a brush with an actual point on it. All right. Such a small area. I wonder if we're really going to get the effect we were looking for. This is my first time actually using this, so if I have to go back with the regular paint and saturate it more, I can. I like the effect this was giving off, and sometimes you can't tell exactly what you're going to get until it's completely dry, so I think I'm going to give it a shot. Give it a shot, see how it looks. It's funny thing about painting is if you have to fix something, it's really not very hard to do. And if you're using like thin down paints, you can typically just paint right over something. These guys have really taken shape too. Big fan of how they're looking so far, and every little detail just takes them like one step closer and gives them like that extra little pop. See how they look when they dry. What I'm concerned about is just it's such a small piece of surface area that it's tough for the contrast paint to actually like get to do its thing. But we'll see. Got to give it a shot, and then if it doesn't work, you can always go a different route. A little too much in there. There we go. I just wicked away a slight bit there. Interested to see, like, you know, sometimes the colors don't pick up the same way on camera as they do in you know, real life, especially with like a super bright light on above my head. So I'm curious to see how they look on camera versus in, you know, in reality. They do look really good so far. Yeah, it looks good. It definitely looks like it lightens up as it dries, and really gives like a little more of an effect to it. But I'm a big fan of a lot of the other contrast paints, so I had a feeling I was going to like this one as well. Now we're going to go ahead and just do a couple of little bits in the tallasar blue. And that's essentially just like the blue version of what we just used. This is like a super rich blue. But what I want to use it for, if you put it over white, like on the power weapon like this, it'll give you like a really cool effect. And you can like easily do some OSL on top of this to get like even more of like the, you know, light brightness effect. I didn't quite go with like the grim dark look that I've been doing a little more of lately with these guys. I went more with like the crisp clean lines and highlights and everything, but I may do a grim dark set at some point in time as well, because I really like that. And doing like a little less detail, a little less line work, make everything like a little more gritty, but like the OSL and stuff like that really brings out like, you know, important details. And then let's see, for these guys, I was thinking on these guns actually to do like the blue. I didn't want to do green again because I didn't want it to look too much like plasma, so I was thinking about doing that blue. So we could go ahead and I had considered a purple. I thought that might look kind of cool too. And I put just a little on the tip here too. Kind of give off the effect like it was glowing. And then also on the back part where it's like the plasma looking coils. And again, when you're doing this, if you get just a little bit on like the surrounding areas or edges, you know, you can easily disguise it to make it look intentional, like it was an OSL. Which, if you're not familiar with that term, it's object source lighting. It's basically like, you know, a flashlight giving off light, essentially. Or like a plasma coil giving off like a glowing light. And it's basically like illuminating what's around it. And these are cool too, because if you start with just a lighter coat of it, you can get more of like this effect that I'm getting right here. But if you go real heavy on it, you can get, or like a couple coats I should say, you can get like a full-on like painted like royal blue, very saturated paint, and it looks awesome. Which is cool because it essentially like lets you use the contrast paints in a lot more ways than most people probably realize or have used them. Yeah, I like that. That's giving off a nice blue. Maybe do just like a tiny bit of like an energy highlight at the end on that. So we've got those done. And then for the screens themselves, on their wrists, they basically have like that little like display screen. I was going to do those either blue or green. I think I'm going to go with the dark green and just do like a couple little edge highlights on it. I could go with that tesseract again and just stick with that. Kind of keep it simple, but you know, I have to paint it white first anyway, so it's another step regardless. But I do like how that looks. Looks really cool. I think I'm gonna go like more of a traditional sense on that screen right there, and same with the ones that are on their wrists or like their forearms. This little like screen piece right here where I didn't paint it yellow, I'm gonna, you know, like I didn't paint that piece yellow, I'm gonna paint the actual screen itself, I think green, but I don't think I'm gonna go the same green as like the tesseract. I'm going to start with like a dark green and then just do like a traditional highlight. So, alright, so for this technique, You're basically just going to be doing starting with like essentially like a Dark Angels green or Caliban green or something like that, and we're just going to block out these plates on their arms, and then we're just going to slowly do kind of like a highlight in certain areas to make them basically look like illuminated, or like they could be illuminated. Should give like a cool effect. And you can do the same thing with like blue, and I think on the shield I'm gonna go through and do the same thing with this white bit right here, just in blue. And you'll see it gives kind of like that like glass like display screen kind of look to it. This guy's is a little bit different. I'm not sure why specifically, but he has like sort of like an opened up panel, and maybe that's where the actual screen's supposed to be, and the top part's just like a cover for it. But the way it's always painted, or I've seen it painted a lot of times, would be like more like what I was describing, where the whole panel lights up. See, this one doesn't have like the cover over it, so I don't know if this whole thing's supposed to really be glass. I'm not sure how it was designed. And it's funny because the artist, a lot of times, like especially the guy who paints it up first, you know, he's just gonna do based on what he thinks. And then next thing you know, it's on the box art and it's not even like done correctly. Maybe this whole thing is just supposed to be like a cover, and then this is the actual like screen and like interactive part underneath, which is probably more realistic. So but you want to just basically get a nice uniform whatever color you're going to start with as your base across here, and you can water it down a little if you have to. Just keep like a nice smooth panel look, because we want it to look like glass when it's done, so we don't want it to be all like chalky and have a bunch of like lines clearing it. And this is one of the times where, you know, you're so close to the end, it just makes sense to just take your time. Because the last thing you want to do at this point in time, if you can avoid it, is making any mistakes and then having to redo parts of a model that you've already painted. Especially with, like, you know, we went through quite a few steps along the way with these, and we only have like a few little detail bits and highlights left to do. So these guys have them, but they're like covered up by the extra piece of armor that they have. So I guess they can't even get to their heads up displays. So we want to get a brush with a decent tip on it. Doesn't have to be too crazy. And now all we're going to do is just go in with our lighter color, and just like the same way, I'm not even really going to be blending actually at this point. Just like the same way, we're just going to cover up part of the panel instead of all of it. We're just going to cover part of it. So if we have this guy's little panel right here, we just want to hit like maybe like 75% of the panel. And then in this case, what we want to do is we want to leave the darkest part up towards the top, and we want to start lightening it at the bottom, like contrary to what you would think, like the opposite effect of a typical highlight. And then we're just going to take that same bit that we have there and just kind of drag it over it, so we get kind of like that rounded off look. And that's all we're looking to do. So we're going to pick how we're going to do them, and we're going to do them all the same. So we're going to make that bottom part, contrary to what you would normally think, we're going to make that the brightest part, and you'll see why it all comes together in the end. But you're essentially just taking the bottom two lines, or the side and the bottom, and just making like a 90, and then you're just kind of connecting them. Same thing, we're just going to start right here. Grab that line. And we'll just drag it over. And you want to make sure that you let that dry plenty before you go back and start touching it, so you don't like tear open the paint or anything. So now what we're going to do is we're going to do that screen real quick. So I'm going to get just a little bit of macragge blue, and we're just going to block out this screen real quick. And obviously it was white because I wasn't quite sure what route I was going to go with it. I was thinking about doing that little like blue effect that we have right there as well, but I don't want it to look the same. Get a nice uniform coat over everything. Alright, now that's just been drying for a minute there. I'm going to take that same green that I just used, and then I'm going to add just a little bit of yellow to it. And this is where like the blending comes in, because you can do as many stages with this as you want. The more like subtle of a transition you have, the less evident it's going to be, and the better like overall you're going to have. But you know, do you want to do this 100 times, or do you want to do like 3? It's up to you. So, but all we're looking to do is just take the exact same spot that we already did, and we're just going to do a little less than we did last time. So we're not going to come quite as high up or as far over. And we're just looking to basically get a little bright green spot right there at the bottom. Just a little brighter than what it was before. And over here, because we did it based on like the way the light would be reflecting, it's going to be opposite. This one's going to go at the top. And it's basically just because his arm's upside down, it's just going to go at the top. Otherwise you wouldn't really get to see anything, and we would sort of just lose all that cool detail of the screen, because nobody's ever going to look at the bottom. So we'll highlight it just a slightly different way so that it catches your eye when you're looking at the model. And then same thing for this one. We're just going to do a little less of that. Alright, and while those other bits are drying, we're just going to grab this bad boy here. And what we want to do now is a little something different. It's similar to what we just did, but we're going to like tune it a little to make it look like this glass that you can kind of see through. So what we're going to do is the same thing. We want to focus towards the bottom right side. And we're just going to run it across there. And that's going to be primarily what just gives us a little bit of extra depth to the glass. And then we're going to do the same thing on this side. Man down. There we go. Now we're just going to do a little bit lighter. And we're just going to kind of do like a cross. But first we want to do just a tiny bit more on the bottom here. go. And we will let that dry for just a minute there. And while we've got it right here, I'm going to just take this guy and I'm going to give just a tiny little bit of brightness right in there. And just one more kind of right in the middle of each of these. And all I'm going to do is just do just going to come back in with a little bit lighter of a color, the white, and just dab it right there. And that'll kind of give like a focus to like the power or the energy a little bit more. Go. And then we should be able to come back to this guy in just a moment. We're going to focus this just on the center of each one of these coils, and you can kind of wrap it around like 3D a little bit, but the goal is to just lighten up the center portion of each one of these just a little bit. And then we're going to do the same thing with the white and just kind of lighten it up. And now I'm coming back to that. It's the Lothern Blue, and this is without being mixed at all. And all we're going to do is just do a couple like diagonal lines to kind of give like that glassy effect. And now look, we've been kind of shading it this way, so when we do these diagonal lines, we want to go the opposite way. So it's going to kind of contradict what we already did and make it stand out a little more. And see, we went this way before, so now we want to go the opposite way with these lines. Once again, just so it doesn't all get caught up into like the same kind of just looking all the same. There we go. Alright, we're just about finished. Everybody's starting to get like some real bright looking colors to them, and things are starting to really look like they're glowing, and definitely getting the effects we're looking for. What we want to do now is come through on those green panels that we did, and we're just going to do a third color. So we did the darkest, and then we did lighter green, and now this is just a combination of the green with a tiny bit of yellow and a little bit of white. And we're just going to use a tiny bit of it. And it's kind of funny too, because you can almost now compare it to the effect that you get from tesseract, and it's almost like the same effect. So it's basically like, you know, if they're comparable, you could do the same thing with tesseract with a lot less work. But that's what we're looking to do right there. And that's just going to give like that final kind of little bit of like a glass like look to each one of those. Alright, and now we just want to, now that we've done that, we're just going to take one tiny little bit of that same color now, and we're gonna, on these panels right here, on the absolute darkest part of the panel, we're just gonna put one little dot up in the corner. And the same thing right here, where we didn't touch at all, that top left corner where it's the absolute darkest, we're just putting one little dot. And one more time. Alright. And then we're going to go back to our blue, and we're going to do the same thing with the white. We're just going to take our white paint and mix it with the last blue that we use, and we're going to get it almost all the way white with just a hint of like a blue left, and get it sort of like a glaze. Then we're just going to take that, you can see it's almost white on my brush, we're just going to take a tiny little dot on each of these. There we go. And then we're going to use the same color, and we're just going to do that same thing again on the very bottom corner. There we go. And then just one little dot in the top left. There we go. And then I'm actually going to go back with just a little lighter of a color than we did before on the glass, and I'm just going to add a tiny bit more. Alright, well, I went through and just did a couple other little edge highlights on like the silver, and added a little black to the bolters. Nothing too crazy, just basic steps, but I think we're going to call it done there. Obviously I haven't done the bases yet. I'll switch them over to the like Necromunda style bases after this. If you're interested in some better pictures, also a little more detailed, high definition, make sure you check out the Facebook page, as you can really get like the close-ups, and things came out real nice overall. I think there's a couple things maybe I would change if I did them again, but overall I'm very happy with it. I would say honestly, like the tesseract glow essentially does the effect like perfectly. It worked great. I did just a slight little like painted on edge highlight over the iyanden yellow, but overall that just does all the work for you. Same with, I mean, really just the combination of the contrast paints, you know, simple dry brushing, washing, and then some edge highlights has really yielded like an awesome completed set of guys. I'm really happy with how these guys came out. They definitely look awesome to me, and excited to put them on the table. Yeah, overall I would say they came out very nice though. Like the color combination, it definitely like stands out. The idea was to get like the you know, energy effects and the flashlights and stuff to look like they were kind of glowing with the sharp contrast, which I was afraid was going to be a little difficult to do with the brightness of the yellow. And initially I really didn't like the yellow when I first saw it, because I'm like, man, why would these guys want yellow? Like, they're making themselves a target. But I get it that, you know, down there they're kind of the law, like nobody really messes with them, so they probably don't have to worry about it like that. But overall I think everything came out really nice. I love the models, are sweet. Definitely cool. And slap them on a couple bases, and then we'll get some still shots and everything, and get them on Facebook. But we'll definitely have a battle report soon with them as well, and play a couple games. Get to really enjoy the new Necromunda for the first time, as we haven't actually played yet. I've been so busy with everything going on. But I think overall these guys are super cool. Definitely looking forward to smashing some skulls and shooting some energies. But yeah, I mean, you guys watch the steps. It's very basic techniques, just a lot of them. Just using the same techniques over and over, and you know, you can stop whenever you want to. You don't have to keep going with that last little edge highlight. But a lot of times I find, like, you know, if you do an initial color and then a wash, and then after the wash you do like 2 highlights versus 3, or 1 highlight versus 2, it makes like a huge difference to just spend that extra time, which is like very little, and just do a tiny bit extra on the guys. So, but yeah, these models are awesome. It came out really nice. Definitely like the paint scheme, like the by the box or box style paint scheme. Real cool. And I may add in like a little bit extra details, maybe some decals on the little chest pieces of the knees, or some like the painted on little stripes. But I think I'm going to go ahead and call it there. They came out very nice. Definitely happy with them, and looking forward to playing some games. That's our how to paint the Palanite Enforcers and Subjugator Patrol. And this Warhammer Man Studios. I'm Warhammer Man. And if you liked the video today, make sure you give us a like, subscribe, and check out the still pictures on Facebook. Appreciate the support, guys. I'm out of here.